All right, we're going to factor trinomials where a value does not equal 1. So just remember our trinomials have this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. And if the number in front of your x squared does not equal 1, we factor it slightly different. So what we do is we start off with our two sets of parentheses. And just remember that what we put in the first spot has to multiply to that first term of 3x squared. So that's kind of a nice one because really your only options are 3x and x. All right, now what we put in the second spot has to multiply to a positive 3. Again, that's kind of nice because you don't have very many options, just 1 and 3. But one thing I want to point out is it's multiplying to a positive 3, and there's another positive. Our outside and inside terms have to add up to 10x. So that just tells me that everything's going to be positive. So plus 1 plus 3. And then we check to see if we did it right. So we check the inside terms. 1 times x is x. We check our outside terms. 3x times 3 is 9x. And we want to know if these add up to our middle term. That adds up to 10x. So I look up here and I say, oh, there's a 10x. That means we factored it correctly. So my final answer is 3x plus 1 times x plus 3. I know this is factored correctly because I specifically chose the 3x and x. That multiplies to 3x squared. The 1 times the 3 multiplies to 3. And so what we have to check is how do we get that 10x in the middle. So you check your outside and your inside terms to see if it adds up to that 10x. Sometimes we get it on the first try, sometimes we don't. All right, next example. I get my two parentheses. I look at the first term, it's a 5r squared. So again, that's kind of nice because only 5r times an r equals 5r squared. Now, the second number I put in has to multiply to a positive 7. So it's going to be 1 and 7, but I notice that my outside and inside terms have to add up to a negative value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a negative 1 and a negative 7. Because a negative 1 times a negative 7 gives me a positive 7, so it works. And then I've introduced negatives into my factoring to get that negative 10r. All right, so now I check. Inside we have negative 1r. Check the outside terms. That gives me a negative 35r. These add up to negative 36r. I check to see if that's what we're looking for. No, it's not. We were looking for a negative 10. All right, so I try again. 5r. I'm just, basically, if you have to try something else, first thing I do is I switch these two, because that will give us a different answer. So I'm going to say 5r minus 7, and then r minus 1. So now let me check the inside, gives us a negative 7r. The outside gives us a negative 5r. We're adding those together to get negative 12r, and that does not equal this negative 10r. So we haven't gotten very far with this one. You want to think if there's any other possibilities. Well, 5r doesn't have any other factors besides 5r and r. 7 doesn't have any factors besides 7 and 1. I know they both have to be negative because they have to multiply to a positive 7, but then somehow combine to add up to a negative 10r. So we have exhausted all of our possibilities, so that means that this cannot be factored, and we just call it prime.